Hi, everyone. Welcome to Quilting Unscripted, where the chat is casual about all things quilting. I'm Lynn from Lynn Wheatley Design.
And I'm Carla from Quilting by the River. Hi, everybody. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Carla.
Oh, a long time no see.
Yes.
For those of you that haven't been following along, Lynn and I had a meetup last week. And we got together and did some very important fabric cutting for the cruise and the kits that we're going to be doing on the cruise. So, yeah, spent some time.
Yeah, it was a typical March situation where you never know what the weather's going to be like. And so I actually took a little bit of an alternate route on Monday morning last week to avoid going over two mountain ridges with a potential of icing. And Carla has even a more interesting story about her travels.
I had planned on leaving. It was about a 7-hour drive, and I wanted to get there early so Lynn and I could make ample use of our short period of time together. And I was going to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, they had been predicting this winter storm. Well, if you live in Northern Ontario, that could be every second day, and sometimes it's a storm and sometimes it's just flurries. So my husband's like, oh, by 2 in the morning, it's going to be +2. It'll just be rain. You'll be fine. Okay. So I get up bright and early, shower, get all ready to go. 6:30, fire up my phone, and I take a look at the road report. And the map shows all routes, east, north, west, and south. No, north, south, east, and west, closed. Highways all closed due to snow. And when I mean snow, now that we're over it, Sudbury got 36 inches, like a yard or more, all within, a 12-hour period. And then it warmed up and there's, freezing rain and all this stuff. So I wake up and I'm ready to go and I'm not going anywhere. And I'm panicking and I'm like, oh my goodness. So, every 20 minutes you're loading up that app and you're looking at the weather and it's still closed. So they finally started by about 11 o'clock, opening up the highways. Sudbury West was, open, snow covered, but not closed. Sudbury East opened up. Sudbury, odds and sods. Sudbury South, head down towards Toronto, which is the direction I was going, south to the U.S., was closed. And it was still closed. And I phoned Lynn and I said, what's the backup plan? Like, I'm a mess now. My husband says I was about to blow up. He said, I just had pictures of bits of you. So anyway, long story short, 1 o'clock, I'm looking at the east and we have the back road. And I said, that's it. I'm getting in my car. I'm driving the back road. I'm headed to North Bay and I'm going to take Highway 11 down south. And actually the roads were quite fine. It rained. It was very, very rainy. And it was dark by the time I met Lynn. I did the 401 East, which anybody who's down in that area, I was around Kingston, pouring rain, transports spitting in your window. And I'm thinking, oh God, just get me there. So made it through the border, got to Lynn's, and she came out of the house to say hello kind of thing and stood on the porch and goes, my God, it's freezing. And I had been watching that temperature drop the whole time and thinking, oh God, just park this car soon.
Yeah, I arrived in Watertown, New York at about 4:15 and it was 60 degrees on Monday. And I did a couple of errands, got some groceries for us. And then I kind of hunkered down, had a meeting. And then Carla came in it was about 9, just shy of 9 when she showed up. And it was cold outside.
It was cold.
Well, it turned bitterly cold. And Watertown, 81 goes through Watertown. And there was a 20-car pileup that night. And everything froze solid. It turned to snow. And it was just like the blizzard conditions and everything. So, of course, we were there not to visit Watertown, but we were happily hunkered down with some food and a whole bunch of fabric. And we were happy.
Yeah. Yes, I had an angel on my shoulder because had I been probably an hour later,
Yep. Whole different story.
Whole different story. So, I think everybody up in my neck of the woods has just about had it with Mother Nature and winter. It's bring on the spring. So with that said, pretty pumped to get on a cruise and be in the Caribbean.
Right.
I might take my socks off.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of interesting now as we're getting closer. It's only about 10 days away before Carla leaves her house and I'll leave the next day as we venture south. All the, the planning and the things that have happened over the last 18 months as you get ready to do one of these big events. So super, super excited about that. And yeah.
So, basically our meeting up was solely to cut 25 quilt kits, but not in yardage, in their individual pieces.
Right.
So the pieces ranged from 4 1/4 inches, 6 inches, 5 3/4 inches. We cut some, what was the little ones? 4 by 2 1/2.
Yeah.
So if you need.
So this is a quilt kit cut. The only thing that's not cut are there's curves in this design and they're not cut, but all of the squares, the rectangles, the strips, they're all cut to and ready for the quilter. So, like the 4-inch squares that I cut of the background, I cut 1,700 of them. So that was just one of the 4-inch squares. And an example of, how many there is required when you have a quilt that has many blocks and then 25 kits of many blocks. So we had a great time. We did get to visit the local quilt store, which was quite nice. They had a lot of stuff. Yeah. So we did get out. Carla had to get new wipers for her car. So we went to the Subaru dealer and then off to the quilt store. So no trip goes without getting to the quilt store.
Yeah. It was like, okay, Lynn, we got to get out of this house a little bit here.
Yep.
We were getting a little brain dead. Not only that, I mean, after we figured over 31 hours of cutting, we both did not walk. We were 20 years older.
We were tired
when we started to, it was pretty crazy. So doing all that cutting, when it came time to think about tonight's live, I said, Lynn, we need to just sort of have a casual chat about what we've learned, what we've used. And I know for a lot of quilters, as we age, you've got the shoulders, you've got the wrists, you've got the eyesight problems, the neck, the lower back. And let me tell you, we brought tables, we brought table risers, because you're not going to stand at any kind of a low table for any length of time in doing what we did. And, having an ergonomic setup in your sewing room.
Right.
If you're one of those quilters that quilts a fair amount, that proper height, elbow height, top to the table, it's worth its weight in gold. It's like the lumberjack who has that good chainsaw. You've got to have the setup just to make it through. And some quilts require more cutting than not. So one of our takeaways, and we both have one, and Lynn and I have had ours for a while. We used our Stripology ruler to the max. And if you don't know what a Stripology ruler is, I've got mine mounted on a board, and then you can tell us about the Stripology ruler.
Yeah, so the Stripology ruler, there's a couple of different models, but we used extensively the extra large because we were cutting so much fabric. And it is designed to cut accurately in 1/2 and 1/4 inch increments, both in the strip length. It has all of these marks and indicators on how you cut both your strips on width of fabric, but then you can go down to the square level. You also can understand how to do 1/2 inches, whole inches, and then the shift over to do 1/4 and 3/4. So it was absolutely invaluable in the kits that we were cutting, because we cut a lot of stuff at the 1/4 inch, and we cut a lot of stuff at the 3/4 inch. So, it's a slot. It's a very tight slot for your rotary cutter.
Yeah, it just fits in there.
It just fits in there. There's a teardrop that you start in at the bottom and you go up. And it is very snug. And the acrylic is thick enough so that it really doesn't move on you, which is another thing. But that does bring up a topic that people really, sometimes we get lazy, we get tired. You really need to keep your rotary cutter straight up and down, that blade straight up and down. Because even if you're cutting on the side of the ruler and you have your blade cockeyed, okay, you're going to not get exactly the cut. Yeah. So this you need to keep that straight up and down because it is such a snug, tight fit. So we used both. We both had the extra large and the regulars with us, and used them extensively over the 3 days to get.
Now, if you're rapid math challenged like I am, and I'm not embarrassed to say there are times where I go 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Don't do that.
Because there's lots up in the noggin that you're thinking about on any given day, and you don't want to make a mistake. So I'm one of those precautionary people where, especially if I'm doing something like 3.5, 9, 3, 7, and then it's like,
right,
that kind. So I'll map it out. I'll draw myself a chart and I'll do the numbers. And if you notice on the bottom of mine, I've got these fancy little arrows.
Yes, they're.
So I mark my arrows so that, you just don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to cut the first one right and then miss by 1/2 inch on your second cut. So I love using the arrows.
I love using Carla's arrows.
They're a product by GE Designs, and they are called ruler stickers. And so you can't see them here, but this whole piece of pink, it has arrows pointing up and then arrows pointing down. So I guess each, you get 192 arrows in this package. And there's 3 different colors. There's purple, yellow, and orange in this package. You can buy them in blue, blah, blah, blah. So, you can mark out if you're doing 3.5s, those guys can be purple. If you're doing 4s, those guys can be, so you can put the stickers on, you peel them off. They're not good for many, many sticks, but they do stick a couple of times. So I love the stickers for that moment when especially if you're low on fabric, you certainly don't want to waste an entire strip because you were off in your cut. So that guy does what I would say would be a full width of fabric folded in half, and then we can layer them underneath.
If you're using a really good blade, you can do 6 or 8, depending upon, like we you stack the multiples, which makes sense for your kitting operation or your cutting operation. So sometimes it was 4, sometimes it was 6 for us. So that kind of comes to, well, how do you, so there's the other one. Yeah,
this
that's
is
the regular size one.
I haven't used mine yet. Lynn, you've used yours.
I have, and I've actually taught a couple of different quilt designs that you actually make blocks that are on diagonals using the stripology ruler and actually building a block and then dicing it apart and then sewing it back together and then dicing it again. So there's all kinds of things you can do with the ruler. I'm in that category of being a quilting ruler geek. So I've done a couple of quilts with that ruler just to kind of like totally understand what she did.
The stripology is a Checkers quilt, Creative Grids product.
Right.
It was designed by, and I can never say her name.
Gudrun Erla.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and there are books, there are
Yeah.
project books out there. And I think the first one that I picked up is sort of like the how to go about using it kind of thing.
Yep.
But, you know, I have a couple of my quilters that come to the studio here. And, you know, they've bought it in tandem. So, you know, they may get together. One guy cuts the strips. The other one, you know, uses the stripology, or it may go from one house to the other, depending on, you know, who's doing what. Because they're not, I mean, up here, they're not cheap. You're running 100 plus. But it's something that, you know, if you like making quilts and you're cutting.
There is quite a bit of time savings when you need to cut a fair number of the same dimension, or, you know, a lot of strips. You know, if you're doing something where you're going to need multiple strips, it does save time. There's no doubt about it.
I cut 4 layers deep and 3 strips all attached to one another wide. So in one cut, I got
12 squares.
12 squares
in one cut. So, you know, you can't beat that for productivity reasons. So that was, it's definitely a tool that I would never go without again once I was introduced to it and started using it. Mostly when I started doing all of this kitting that I do. Like right now, I'm in the middle of, I came home, shifted gears to, right after our cruise, I'm headed out to AQS Quilt Week in Paducah, and all of my kits that are going to my kitted classes need to ship tomorrow. So I down there using that again for all of those, the strips that are going into my binding classes and such, and my wedge star classes. And so it's just, it's become almost as frequently used as that Tucker trimmer, just saying.
You know, it's worth noting that when I left home, the size of your rotary cutter is dependent on what you're doing with it. So if you're using the stripology, 45 millimeter ruler is the go-to. The 28 one is too small. It doesn't have the depth from here to go through the slot. And we use the 45 when we're doing curve piecing because, again, it's got to go through that acrylic ruler. And the 60, the blade is so big that if you're slow towards the edge, you can't get the blade into that teardrop section where you insert the blade to cut. So the 45 millimeter one is your go-to. I left home and I said, I'm going to be cutting. I better put a new blade in, because for a lot of us, it's like, I'll just keep using it because it's still sort of okay. You get into class and, I'm sure we've all been there, but you have that, couple of students that they're sawing or they cut and all the little tears and then they're off and layers slip, and it's just not, I always said it's just not worth the frustration. So I threw in a new blade. And when I threw in a new blade, I thought, well, I'm going to throw in an endurance blade. So you want to know about the difference. An endurance blade apparently is engineered to cut up to twice the distance or amount of fabric as a standard blade. They're made from high quality tungsten steel, which is what the other ones are actually made out of, but it has a different chemistry in the formation of the steel, so it lasts longer. They reduce the need for frequent blade changes, which saves time and lowers the cost per item and anxiety. I often say I am that quilter where this is a hobby. I don't have time to fight with my hobby. If I'm going to be consistently frustrated This is why I don't do hand applique. You know, it's like, why am I just putting myself through this when nothing seems to be working? So often, Lynn, as I know you do, we often as instructors will say, you know, bring to class your rotary cutter, your ruler, and after the rotary cutter, we put new sharp blade. And the reason is that's the last thing you want to do in class when your instructor's sitting there saying, okay, well, I'll give you an hour and you cut this, make that, blah, blah, blah. And there you are, because it
Right.
isn't.
You're worth it. You're just worth having a good blade. You know,
now,
we do a lot of work with that blade, and you know, it's just worth having a good one and having a sharp one when you need it.
Yeah. I know that in the guild that I belong to, they have somebody that will sharpen blades. I've never been a fond admirer of sharpening a blade. I once years ago was in the Olfa booth. And it's something that they just really, now granted, I'm the skeptic, you know, so that could be the sales pitch of, you know, it doesn't really work. I do have a blade sharpener and I've tried it. And if it gets a nick in it, that's it. Right. It's nicked. It's done. Right. That edge is so fine on that blade that if it gets a little nick or what I like to call a pothole, you're not getting it out. Now, we talked about this earlier today or yesterday or one day about why I have, you know, I see lots of quilters, as do you, and they go, I just put a new blade in. Why is it skipping? You know, and I think one of the habits that we get into is you're sitting with your ruler and you get and you start, where am I? We start way down here before we get to the ruler, and you're off a little bit. So you're clipping that edge. And every time you clip that edge with your blade, what happens is you're making a nick in your blade. So what do you do? What's your habit? What do you have a habit?
I do. I do have a habit. My habit is to start on the ruler and then roll back so that it's just at the end, right in the middle of the cutter, and then I go forward. Yeah. So that way I don't hit the corner of the and I know that I'm truly up against that blade, side of the ruler with the blade as I start to cut.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I do too. It's more or less like a sweeping motion and rum.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's how we drive in Northern Ontario in the snow. Rum. Yeah. So if you notice that the corner of your ruler is like getting nicks in it, that might be one of those little habits that we don't realize we're doing. And it's going to take some time, but just very slowly, just ease your way into bringing it in, going back, and then forward again. Saving the blade.
Right.
Yeah. What else did we learn? Besides the fact that 31 hours causes you to walk like you're 90.
Well, you know, I think that we reinforced the need to be organized so that you can be productive. And we also reinforced our love of paper plates. So in this quilt, you know, there's 25 units in this quilt. And so you'll see right there in the background of Carla's, the bags for the kits with the labels and everything, and the paper plates all ready for the cutting process. Okay. So we use those paper plates. We use them. I use them all the time, but we traditionally use them when we stack up our cut pieces and we go to make our quilt. And the stack of paper plates is, you know, sometimes it's in the order that we do it, so we know where we are, but it's got your project contained in this like 10-inch spot. Okay. But in this case, we used it to keep track of and to keep the process of cutting all the parts. Now this is 25 units. Some of those units had 3 pieces of fabric involved. So you can imagine what happens with those paper plates as we go along, and the units get cut and staged, and then they get stuffed in the plates, and then they get stuffed in the project bag. So the paper plates were really again reinforcing as a good tool to keep yourself organized.
Well, and I know students of ours, that have, been with us a couple of times, have been well versed in the world of paper plates.
Right.
Some of them have opted not to jump on the thing. I do believe that your paper plate can be that place where not only do you know what to cut, but as you're working through the cutting, that plate is going to hold the fabric or the shapes that you need to, say, make a half square triangle, and maybe the blue and white half square triangle. You'll have another one that, and you're going to indicate on there, perhaps maybe, I don't know, if they're different sizes, or it's
right.
just that go-to. The other thing is, I read a little piece that you wrote the other day, and I went, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. But you always learn stuff from your friends. Lost my train of thought.
I know what it is.
Okay, go.
It's having the plates in the order of assembly.
Yes.
Because a pattern is written normally, and you start to build some units, and then you'll eventually get to the block and the quilt assembly. Well, if you have your plates in the order of assembly, then you don't spend any time figuring out where you need to start next. So you get plate number 1 done, and you put it on the bottom. And then when you come home the next night, and you have 20 minutes between the time you put dinner in the oven and you can have, it'll come out, you can go down there and sew for 20 minutes. You would be surprised how quickly a quilt can be made if you stitch 20 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
When you have those 20 minutes. So that order of operation can keep you organized just by stacking your plates in the right order. So, yeah.
I told Lynn, I said, even though you do it, I do it somewhat like that, but that whole process of putting them in order also makes you, the quilter, read the pattern. We always say, read that pattern first. And much like, and no offense to the opposite gender around here, but much like those that don't read instructions and just jump into building the IKEA table and use the wrong screws for the legs when they should have been done for the backs of the chairs. It actually familiarizes yourself with, oh, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do, oh, and look it, we're going to put the block together. Or if there's something in there that perhaps maybe you don't really understand, when you get there, it gives you a little bit more of an understanding as to what's happening and why you're doing what you're doing. So, all those tips and tricks. Valerie just came on and she said, love the stripology ruler. Val quilts a lot, cuts a lot, and she's a stripper. Sorry, Val. So yeah, lots to take away from doing what we did. So hopefully we checked and double checked.
Yeah, and most of all, it is really, really important every once in a while to just get away with one of your quilting buddies. It is so refreshing just to do that and kind of like check out of the regular part of life and just go and do, even if it's, this was work related for us, but it was really also related to friendship and, just having the camaraderie that we have. And all quilters have that. Yeah. And so I suggest the next time you get a chance, grab a place, stash yourself with another quilter for a couple of days. It is just a great time. Even though, yes, I was tired, and yes, we both drove several hours to get to this central location. It was just, I wouldn't have done I wouldn't have done anything else with those days.
Yeah.
So,
You know, Lynn and I, even though, you know, we met certifying for Studio 180, there are still things, and it almost is fun. We still do things a little bit different, and doing this project together sort of highlighted the differences in, you know, maybe. And I don't want to say, you know, we do things differently in Canada than the US. That's not at all how it was. It's just, who have you taken classes from? Who have you learned from?
how
What
did you
books
learn
have
your
you
quilting?
read?
Yeah.
You know, what videos have you watched? What, you know, what habits have you picked up? What have you learned that works? So when you're together and you go, what are you doing? And they go, well, I do it like this. And I go, oh, okay. You know, so there's that back and forth of, you know, you're always trying to get your buddy to do it your way. But yet in some instances, it's like, no, she might have something here, you know, like the paper plate thing. But yeah. And we were discussing how advantageous it's going to be for our cruisers. Because we've come up with a couple of things that we teach differently.
Right.
And we will share, you know, pick the way that you like to do it, and explain why, you know, each of us does it differently. But they will have the advantage of seeing more than one way. And I think that, you know, and I'm a big stressor for education and taking classes, and take classes from as many people as you can, because everybody brings something else to the table.
That's right.
And on the onslaught, you might not agree with what they're doing, but you never know where you might have to implement that particular technique.
Right. Because for some quilters, different ways of doing it is easier. You know, we talk about pinning as a great example of, there are many different techniques of pinning, and whatever works for your hands, your ergonomics to get the result you want is what you should do. You shouldn't just do the way I do it or the way Carla does it. You should take all that information in, and you should figure out what works for you. And then you implement your own little process. But just like opening the quilter's eyes to different ways so they can refine and make a good process for them. That's kind of like where we go with this. Yeah.
I like to say it's keeping all that information in your pocket. So when you run into a different situation where yours perhaps maybe isn't working, you can go, no, just a minute. Somebody told me something about doing it doing it this way. I'm going to try it in this instant. And that's, you know, that I think is worth the weight in gold. So I'm really, really hoping that our joint mission, and our joint mission in the Caribbean is to, you know, sort of allow a little bit of both of us to sort of be able to give them some different perspectives and tricks and things that we do. And now I have a funny for Lynn, guys, for tonight. And it is a Carla brain to the utmost, because Lynn has a very, you know, working with Lynn, she sometimes my best friend's a little intimidating because she's got that engineering brain. Don't forget, I got health sciences behind me.
So when you're sick, you go to Carla.
When you need your back massage, I'm the girl. But you know, when it comes to like, Lynn, what's the ratio of the curve on this thing? Oh, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, oh God, okay, fine, whatever. So I was reading her pattern notes last night. And I've done this to my brain a couple of times, and I haven't asked any questions. And I thought, no, I'm going to save it for live so we can have this friendly discussion. So we have this. I'm going to show you the picture, and then you will better understand my brain in its infancy. Okay. So let's take a look at this picture. Now, this she calls the outside curve, and this she calls the inside curve. Okay? See that? So this is Carla's brain. The inside curve goes like this, which to me, it's convex or sticking out. And the bottom one is a concave or a sticking, an inward curve. So it got so bad last night that I got out of bed and I went to the living room and I looked at my husband, got university degree and did all the calculus and the math stuff. And I'm like, okay, explain this to me. Because this to me is an inside curve and that's an outside curve. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but Lynn calls this an outside curve and this an inside curve. So then I had to fire up ChatGPT. Chat, what's going on? So Chat came back and said, no. Are you ready for this? Lynn is right.
Really?
Yeah, Lynn is right. What the takeaway was, for those of you that, have brains like mine, is the curve is based on a circle. So the inside or the outside, that convex is the inside curve. And if I thought about a background square that goes like this, that's the outside curve. Yep. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense, but we'll go for it.
That was based on the circle.
You can see where both ways of thinking.
I can totally see how not understanding that many curves originate from a whole body, like a circle. I can see where, just looking at that fresh out of the gate, you'd think it was backwards.
Yeah. Convex, concave, because when you went to school, you learned about convex curves and concave curves.
Right.
One goes in and one goes out.
Right.
And I'm like, there was a small part of me, love you, buddy. But I'm like, oh, I still want to be right on this one. And go, Lynn, you're all screwed up. You got it wrong.
Yeah, well.
But no.
But maybe that's why I don't think they talk about it that way. I think that was something that I decided to bring in when I started writing my patterns.
It's a thing. It's a thing. I asked Chat.
So, I didn't go to ChatGPT, but it's the thing from the circle. For me, it started from a circle.
Well, see, that's your
because
engineering.
It's that whole
That whole thing that you do.
Yeah, that thing that I do. Oh, that's funny.
It says, a trick teaching tip you might like for class. The piece that looks like it could wrap around the other is the outside curve.
There you go.
So now I got to think in baking terms or something.
I see Val's comment. Look at Val's comment.
Anne and I have a similar argument on the highway with outside lanes and inside lanes.
Nice. Very, very nice, Val. Oh.
That's true, because your outside lane is the one that's closest to the ditch. And your inside lane is the one that's closest to the center line. I just call it the slow lane and the fast lane.
Oh, that's too funny.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
I'm one of these people. Turn left. No,
go that way. Go that way.
Oh my goodness, us quilters, we're a breed in our own, I tell you.
Yeah, we are. So
we do not have a date for next month. Not on my calendar.
We don't?
Not on my calendar, no.
Oh no, I guess everybody's gonna have to stay tuned then.
Oh no, we do. We do.
I thought there was a date in my calendar, but
yeah, cool. Just a minute. We do.
We lied. Oopsie.
Yeah, we did.
It's one of those, senior moments. You just forget.
Well, I think we're allowed because we've been a little bit busy. There we go. There.
Yes, it is the only Tuesday in April. I happen to be not on some venue doing something else. Oh, yes.
My struggle with, our struggle with newsletters, and I've had a couple of new signups for my newsletter. So just stay calm, girls. I've got a couple of days, and it is top of my list because I did miss February because we went away on holiday and I came back and then I got swamped, and then March has come and March is gone. So I will certainly, because I have a couple of pictures to add to my newsletter. The girls have been busy constructing some projects that I want to share with everybody. So we'll put that on the newsletter for sure. And it's busy season for both of us. So I'm trying to make it so that May, depending on what response we get from Island Boutique, will only be Island Boutique. And I'm dying to get at my posh spring project.
Right. Me too.
I have all the fabric.
Yeah.
There's just not enough hours in the day.
So she just mentioned this whole Island Boutique thing. Well, we're in this round again where a week ago we submitted designs for the fall winter 26. 27. No, 26. 27. Yeah, 26. So we are, sitting on sort of eggshells as this is the week of supposedly selections. And what that means is then we have to get at the design and finish the design, give them the details. They send us the fabric, we send them the quilt, blah, blah, blah. And we go on and on about this.
That would be that one of the posts that we talked about, writing fabric requirements for a pattern.
Yeah.
Stress over. I'll look at Lynn and go, should I add more?
Yeah, we always go back and forth about what do you add to that fabric for the miscut with the quilter, or does the quilter, we have this conversation amongst pattern writers all the time, or does the quilter who makes miscuts just buy more because they know their tendency is to miscut?
Yeah. My biggest concern is my project that I have put forward. This time we'll be using layer cakes. And I don't want to buy a whole pile of fat quarters. It's really expensive, but I really love the fabric, and maybe a layer cake might do. But how upset are you if you've got layer cakes left over from a project that has recommended layer cakes?
Yeah, there's the trying to use pre-cuts. I decided this round I wasn't going to do that. Carla embraced using the layer cake. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how this goes. Hopefully we'll hear something this week, and then we'll know whether or not that May is very busy. May, June. The quilts usually need to be back into California around the 1st of July. So
So it's like sew and do studio work till 2, and then you get yourself outside and you cut grass and plant and swat flies and come back in. And
right.
I wanted to point out that it is 7:45. I need new glasses. And I am not dark yet. I could go outside and walk around and not need a light.
Yeah.
We are.
Carla lives in the most western portion of this time zone. She is way west of where we live, and we're in the same time zone. So it's pitch dark here. You can't.
Yeah. Lynn comes in the summertime and we're still outside at 9:30 at night. And Lynn's like, my God, it's still daylight. And I don't ever want to live where you are because I don't like dark.
Well, it's later in the morning. So, it's the same amount of daylight. We're not, you have a little bit less daylight because you're a little bit further north, but not much.
Not much.
But you're a bunch west from here. So, but yeah. So it's a busy month on the road in April. May, I do start my over and under block of the month at Middlebury Sew and Back. And that's going to run for six months. And
Did I talk to you? Did I tell everybody my problem I had with your block of the month?
With my block of the month?
Yeah. So I really want to do Lynn's block of the month. So about 3 months ago, I went to the local quilt shop with her pattern and I bought fabric to make her quilt. And I really loved it, blah, blah. Came home, put it away, pulled it out, spread all the fabric out, and thought, oh my God, nobody marked the fabric. I have no idea what fabric goes where. Now, this is coming from the creator of fabric placement notepads. Okay, did I use my notepad? Did I have one with me? No. Do I have them now? I have 3 sheets all folded nicely, tucked in my purse. So this will never happen again. But yeah, I'm at a bit of a loss. I'm going to have to really spend some time and try to figure out what I wanted to go.
Yep. We might have to have a little bit of a design session with you.
What
we do.
I just have, so for you guys that do that, I feel for you because I would have cut it already by now, but I just haven't had the time to spend to figure out.
Right.
Yeah. And I if Cindy's watching, we all know Cindy. We just interviewed Cindy last month. If Cindy happens to be watching, I might be phoning you going, hey, do you remember what I should just show up at the shop and go, okay, what are we doing? Yeah.
Yep. So that's really what's going on here. Getting ready for the big travel month. And on 2 days ago, I just joined in on the opener. Amy from Amy's Quilt Room in Uniontown is doing my block of the month virtually. So they're actually doing it online like we did when the pandemic was around. So she's got a whole clan of people doing it on Sunday afternoons. She's, the shop is closed. She's sewing in her house, just having a good time. So we did a sort of a introductory kind of like meeting and the first month, which are the star blocks in that quilt. So that was fun on Sunday afternoon, meeting all of those guys, some of which I knew from, teaching retreats down there. But yeah, so that fabric line's hitting the shops now. So it's getting a lot of the launching of those blocks of the month programs are launching now in many places. So, Yep. So it's very exciting.
The Forest Frost Island Boutiques line that I made Lumi out of, that I've ordered to do kits for the Killarney retreat. I'm expecting will hopefully arrive while we're away. So hubby's on high alert. And so when I get home, hopefully there'll be the string of bolts lined up along the way. And at that point, then I can price it and let everybody know what the kits are going to cost. But yeah, the Killarney thing is, I've got new signups again. So that's coming along. So if you're thinking about it, I would not be waiting till August to sign up. So there is a limited number. And signups are coming. And I can't wait to spend time with everybody in November, which, by the way, if you're worried about the weather, I don't know if you've noticed, but they are calling for a super El Nino, which means that fall will be hotter than normal and extending, they figure, into the winter of 27. So that first week of November, we should have no snow. So driving should be good because, we've had enough snow now.
Yes, we have.
Now till 2028.
Oh.
What do we do? What do we do?
I don't know. Yep.
Okay.
So Shirley came on and said she always carries sticky notes in her purse for that one reason. Put it on her fabric.
Yeah, well, you were not shopping with me, Shirley. Where were you with your
She
sticky
needed
notes?
somebody to keep her organized on her shopping trip. Oh yeah.
Just a little note for anybody that's doing the cruise that have signed it in. I got my package today. So the Sudbury girls should be getting there. Shirley, you should have yours. If not, it should be coming shortly. So they will hopefully make it here in time. Well, it's too late now to start dieting to fit in the bathing suit.
No.
Just get her on and go have some fun.
That's right. Yeah. Pack the fat bathing suit and off we go. It's just the bare bones. We're going with it. Not much we can do now. So, okay. Well, it's been a great chat, Carla. We've had a lot going on. I know people are starting to get really intrigued by the weather. The days are getting longer. The sun's out more in the evening now because of daylight savings. And so the colors will be coming soon. That's the next thing is we're going to start to see some buds come out. There'll be a little bit of color. You'll see that little red tinge come, and then all those greens. So anyway, keep creating. Get inspired by the change of the seasons. I know I do. I know that, I came up out of the studio. I don't have windows in the studio. And I came up from the studio and it was sunny today and it hadn't been sunny for quite a few days. And it was actually kind of warm. Yeah. So I was intrigued by that. It just gives me a little bit more energy and hope that, spring is going to come, and it will. And those greens will be nice and all those little flowers are going to pop up. So take that little bit of energy and turn it into that creative hobby of yours. Piece up some, like my tulips. See my tulips.
Tulips.
Yeah. So, So keep your quilting adventure going, and we will keep ours as well. Okay. And remember to like and subscribe to our Facebook pages, this YouTube channel. That's what keeps us alive on this. And we will see you in a month on April 28th at 7 o'clock.
We'll have lots to talk about.
We'll have lots to talk about. There's going to be lots of cool quilting, lots of cool tips come out of this trip.
Lynn's going to keep her eyes open when she's in Paducah for anything new and exciting.
Yep. Oh yeah, there'll always be new cool tools, new notions, all kinds of stuff that I'll see in Paducah. So be ready for that. The Paducah wrap up.
Yeah.
On April 28th.
April 28th.
Okay.
As it warms up, get outside. Yeah. Get outside.
Get outside, move around, take a walk, smell the air. It's all part of the creative process.
There you go. It's been great, Lynn. Okay, everybody.
All right, everybody. Stay safe. Keep quilting.
Bye.
Bye.